All right, here we go. What's going on, Giants fans? Brandon London here. We have a lot to talk about and break down when it comes to the 21-6 loss to the Commanders. First week of the season. Wait, am I on? Let me show you.
You see what it says? I'm trying.
Hey, Mark, what's going on?
How you doing, Brandon? Where you at?
Can
you hear me?
hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? I can hear you.
I can't hear you right now. No. Let's do it. Output. MacBook. Mic check. Mic check. Can you hear me, Mark?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
You can hear me fine. I can't hear you just yet. Let's see. Audio.
I can hear you.
Yeah, audio input. Mic. Speak. What's going on? External headphones. Mic check. Mic check.
Can you hear me?
I just don't understand what's going on with my video, audio, MacBook speakers. All right. All right. Can you hear me now, Mark?
I can hear you. Yes. Can you hear
All
me?
right, there we go. All right, we'll just go from here. All right. Well,
All right.
Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the wait. You got to wait on the Giants' first touchdown. You had to wait for me to get my audio taken care of. Mark Cannizarro, longtime Giants columnist for the New York Post, just sports columnist as a whole. Brandon London here, your MC. Former Giants wide receiver, whatever you want to call me, just an angry wide receiver watching this game. Mark, go ahead and I guess give us your thoughts, and we'll get straight into this because I feel like the Giants did not live up to the hype on their first impression in real football.
Yeah, I mean, this was a very, very positive, preseason training camp. There was just a lot of good vibes. You got new quarterback in. The quarterback play has been terrible here for the last, countless years since Eli left. And basically what you saw today, Brandon, was the same crap you saw last year and the year before and the year before that. I mean, this is a team now that's lost its last three openers by a score of 89-12. Since 2011, they are 2-13 in openers. Now that's not all day ball in this regime, obviously, but 186 point differential. I mean, that's just incredible. But when you look at today, you were looking at what you looked at last year with just a different starting quarterback. And listen, Brian Daboll at the end of the after the game said this game was not on Russell Wilson. But at the same time, he was asked multiple times whether Russell was starting next week in Dallas, and he never really said he was. Now, I think he's going to. Obviously, everybody wants, Dart, the rookie, to be in there. But listen, Jackson Dart would have gotten mauled by that Washington defense. Just, it would have been worse, to be honest with you, because Russell Wilson did show, a lot of moxie, I thought, to hang in there in that game. But the bottom line is you got 10 shots inside the red zone, and you come away with no points. That's largely on the quarterback.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, Mark, and maybe. But here's the thing: maybe he goes with Russ next week. Maybe Jackson Dart would have got mauled. Like when I'm talking to a lot of the people that were at the watch party over at One Station Plaza in Bayside, Queens, a lot of people they brought up the question, and like I couldn't. It was hard for me to defend Russ at that time. I
Yeah,
understand what the offensive line looked like, but they're saying like a lot of people were coming back to me with, "Hey, he's in his 14th year. Maybe he can't move the way that a Jackson Dart could move." Because if you look at it, the Commanders' offensive line last year was pretty much the same as it was when they had Tyler Heineke and all those guys like that. Then you input a mobile quarterback like Jaden Daniels, and it flipped the entire script the way we looked at that Commanders franchise as a whole. I'm not here to try and start any sort of controversy or anything like that. Obviously, the offensive line, you would want them to play better as a
it's
unit,
terrible. Yeah,
especially when you're seeing things where the Commanders were only rushing 4 and you had 5 offensive linemen to stay in and block. James Hudson would get beat to the inside. Either Russ would get sacked or he couldn't get out and brain contain and kind of buy a little bit more time with his feet. Again, I'm not calling for any sort of controversy. Obviously, you got to always go back, watch the film, and break down, hey, how can we get better here? How can we get better there? But I agree with you on the strength of if you were just thrown Jackson Dart in without 1-2 weeks of preparation, without knowing a game plan, where the line is going to slide to, how we can protect you here or there, then yeah, it would have been the absolute total thing. But as a wide receiver, a former wide receiver, whether NFL or CFL, I feel Malik Neighbors in that pain, in that frustration he had when he just put the towel over his head, because just like everyone watching at home or at the bars or wherever they were at, Malik Neighbors kind of felt the same thing we felt as a whole, to where it was like, not again. Please, not
yeah.
again.
And he was feeling the pain that, as you said, everybody else that's a Giant fan was feeling. And he had 12 targets today. They tried to get him the ball. He made a couple of really, really good, high point catches, in the second half that kept things going for them. But the bottom line is he was pretty much bracketed almost every time he was out. I thought Wandell, had a fantastic game today. He was one of the stars of the game for the Giants, in my opinion. He had a really good game. Slayton, I'm not even sure Slayton touched the ball today. And Russ, by the way, completely missed Slayton when they sent him in motion on the left side down there.
Yeah.
Never even looked to the left there. He was wide open. It was an easy touchdown. That's on Russ. I don't care where that play's going. You got some vision there. But listen, bottom line is getting back to Russ. And again, it's one game. I get it. But it's just disturbing how much it looked like the same junk from the last year and the year before that. But bottom line is, Bill Parcells would always say, that's a guy I started covering when I first came into the business. You judge a quarterback by how often he gets his team into the end zone. And the bottom line is today, the better former Pittsburgh quarterback was playing at MetLife Stadium today for the Jets by a long shot. Produced, I don't know, what, 4 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns himself today. 3 touchdowns. He threw one and ran for 2. Again, I'm not saying this is all on Russ. The offensive line was awful. It was awful. The running backs ran for 30 yards on 15 carries. You cannot win a football game like that.
No, not at all.
And quite frankly, too, Brandon, it felt to me this entire game as you're watching it. Yeah, it was a 1-possession game, but did it really feel like a 1-possession game? Until they went up 21-6. It felt like the Giants were 3 touchdowns down the entire game, or they were
Did
just
it
on the
really?
cusp of being. To me,
Really?
it did. Listen, I don't think Washington played that well today. That's also what disturbs me a bit, right? They had 89 yards in penalties. They gave the Giants a lot of second chances. That Bobby Wagner penalty kept that last drive alive. They didn't get anything out of it. But, I didn't think Washington played extremely well today. Did you?
No, I don't think they played well, but I think the Giants defense played well enough to keep them in the game. And you know what? It's
Yeah.
the same
Second half,
song.
absolutely.
The same song we've heard, Mark. Like we've heard this before. When Shane Bowen as defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham, defensive coordinator, it's hard to hold the number 4 offense in the league to under 5 points. to win a game. So when we look at the defense is crippled because now you're playing on their heels. Now you can't, who cares about a NASCAR package or what you have? And I thought Brian Burns had a hell of a game, but
Terrific.
who cares what you have in Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence, and these guys, where if they're playing to try and stop the rush the entire game. Now, on the flip side of that, a lot of those second and longs, first and longs, and third and longs, you need to get off the field.
Yeah.
On those drives, you can't give up throws, or you can't allow Jaden Daniels to kind of break, contain, and rush for 10, 11, 12 yards on a second and 15. You can't have that, and they'll beat themselves up when it comes to that. But we're seeing that this game, and I'm not just going to kind of foreshadow the entire season, but we saw to where the Giants defense is looking at their offense like, yo, give me something. Give me something.
I mean, again, we're looking at what we've been looking at, and that's got to be what's most maddening to the Giant fan. I mean, listen, Daniels had a terrific game. They lost contain on him a bit. He had 71 yards rushing. But it's not like he torched them and tore them up. I mean, until the killer sequence there, and the defense probably just at that point had just broken, was that Eckler, that 16-yard catch and run by Eckler on second and 15. The Giants had him backed up a little bit. He felt like a little bit of momentum for the Giants, and he bounces off two DBs and Bobby O, and they couldn't take him down, gets the first down, and the next play, Debo, takes the end around and scores as soon as it's 21-6. I mean, I don't care if the Giants scored on that last possession. It would have taken a miracle for them to score again. It was really disappointing to me. I mean, I'm just like, you sit there and you watch it and you're like, we're watching the same broken record now, and it is one game. I get it, and I know there's going to be, a call for Jackson Dart. It's too early for that. It would be a bad look on the Giants' part and on Dable's part if you spent the entire summer saying that Russ is our starter, and then in week 2 you're bringing the rookie in. You got to let this play out a little bit. But if you're looking at the same nonsense as we looked at today, next week in Dallas, then you got to start thinking about this a little bit.
Absolutely, and I'm reading the comments right here. Blazing One Tech Life can only imagine what he was doing when he thought of that profile name. But he says no moral victory with 6 points, and he is absolutely correct. And this is not us. Again, this is not us bashing the offense or anything in week 1. We still got a lot of football left. But as the player, Mark, I think the biggest frustration in me was as a former player, watching this, and you watch them throughout the spring, you watch them throughout the summer before training camp, going to San Diego, throwing Russ, trying to get that timing and chemistry down. You watch them throughout training camp. They had success. And then you watch and you just see that. So I don't outside of Wandell having a pretty solid game, you're looking at it like there is nothing on the positive that you could take coming out of this game, going into Dallas next week. And I could see, Mark, if it was one thing where, all right, offense struggled, offensive line kind of struggled when it came to the passing game, but we still ran for $125, had a touchdown or 2 on the ground. That wasn't even there. So that's the thing to where it's like, okay, again, I don't want to raise the alarm. I don't want to be too much media and be like, what's going on with the offense? But the fact that they could not run the ball effectively, that kind of makes me look like, okay, next week in Dallas, they got Kenny Clark up the middle. How are we going to get the offense going? And usually to do that, you have to have a strong run game, or a run game that could be a positive for you to kind of lean on and get you out of that slump.
Yeah, listen, I mean, in the running game, that was inexcusable. This, to me, this really was on the offensive line, maybe more than Russ. As we just stated the rushing stats and stuff like that. I believe on the TV broadcast, they brought up, I believe it was Washington was at a 50% pressure rate every time Russ dropped back. So half the time Russ dropped back, he's got guys in his face. And you looked at it. It absolutely, you could just see he didn't trust his protection. As that game wore on, it was clear he had no confidence whatsoever in his protection. I give him a little bit of credit because he did scramble around a little bit and make some positive yards. Out of some plays that looked like they were going to be big time negative plays. I mean, we're going on and on here. When is Andrew Thomas going to be back? I mean, this is a killer for
Yeah.
them. And I'm not saying this is not all on Hudson who took over for him, but this was just the offensive line is a problem. It continues to be a problem, and it just doesn't get fixed. You know.
Yeah. And you can see it in the comments. We got YouTube channel hashtag Bring Back Thomas. Spider-Man says play calling was horrendous. Jordan says need Thomas back ASAP. Luis Lugo says definitely not on Russ, guys. I don't care what quarterback you put out there. They can't produce with this O-line protection. Look at Daniel Jones. He had himself a solid day today. And again, all that does is just play into the narrative of what we all saw. And it's hard to look at this game and try and force some sort of positive when we're talking about the offense. When you listen to the post-game show, Tiki saying the same thing. You're saying the same thing. The post-game show, ESP, everyone, we're all seeing the same thing. And we're hoping this is not the same Giants team of 2024, except you just swap Daniel Jones for Russell Wilson. So, I mean, it's one of those things like in the NFL, you get better from week 1 to week 2, because now you get a chance to kind of realize like, all right, starters, we got to play a full game together. I need to get your head back faster when it comes to this route against this pressure. There's a lot of communication that happens going from week 1 to week 2, but there's nothing better, Mark, than, let's say, okay, our offense is struggling and you guys didn't perform as great as you thought you were going to perform that week. Breaking down the film with a win, and realizing the defense still gave you an opportunity, but you were able to march down the field, score on a 50 and goal for like first and like it was like they had like 10, 12 plays on that first and goal. They got 80 by a penalty, and I'm at the watch party, and I'm on the mic, and I'm telling people like I'm asking fans like, who do you think's going to score the first touchdown here? Scatterboo was in the game, and then everybody's like, oh, Scatterboo. Then it was, all right, Tyrone Tracy's coming into the game, and then it's like,
well, I mean, that whole sequence, Brandon, that whole sequence was the microcosm of the game. I mean, it literally, they were given a free first down there, and they went backward, and when it got back to 4th and 2 again, Daboll had to take the points. I mean, I give him credit for going for the 4th and goal from the 2 for the start, because you want to be aggressive. But at that point, he's looking at his offensive line. They can't block. They're going backward. And listen, I'm not. I don't profess to be an expert on anything. Okay, but I'm still trying to figure out what Mike Kafka's good at. Okay, because I don't. Again, I get it. He hasn't had good quarterback play. They've had issues, but I didn't like the play calling down there. They didn't run the ball enough. They passed it too many times. I throw that one play on down in the goal line later on Russ when Slay was going to the left, in motion. Nobody went with him. I mean, you got to at least have one eye on that. Even if everything's going right, you got to have one eye on okay, is anybody going to pick him up? I mean, listen, you're a receiver, you know the drill, right? I mean, I just. So it's a combination platter of everything. And listen, and Daboll's supposed to be an offensive guru, obviously, and I'm a huge supporter of Daboll. I mean, I've known him for a long time, since he was an assistant with the Jets. I think he's done a fantastic job. I think he's a really good head coach. But at some point you got to make some bold moves here offensively, and I'm starting to feel like after what I saw today, I really did not think we were going to see Dart for a number of weeks into the season. I feel like this today just kind of accelerated that program a little bit. And the bottom line is Daboll's also coaching for his job, everybody in that building is coaching, for his and her, livelihood this year. And if the same offensive output is sitting in front of us next week in Dallas, how long are you going to look at that? Listen, I mean, I know, we always react and overreact to first games of NFL seasons. So,
Yeah.
will this maybe be an aberration, and will Russ be slinging it around and going deep? Maybe he will next week. I mean, we talked about those moon balls he
Yeah.
throws and the deep balls, and literally, I'm not sure there's many people better in the league that get up for those high point catches than Malik does. But Russell didn't have enough time to drop back and let it go that deep to him today.
Wasn't comfortable at all back there. And, we saw that moon ball throughout the spring and the summer, and we were like, it was like the second coming.
Yeah.
Like we came into that Giants facility, because that's something that we had wanted to see. Not only just the fans, not only the players, but media as well. Like I'm in the beat writers room. I'm around the Ryan Dunleavys, the Paul Schwartz, Serbies, the Dan Duggans, and all these guys, Art Stapleton. Everyone, it's not like everyone wants to see this team be bad. Like they want to see this team win and produce, because it only helps us with our retweets and the content that we can.
Better for business for everybody.
And if you would have told me that the Giants were going to score 6 points on this opening game, week 1 down in Washington, I'm not allowed to bet. But I might have had the Brandon Leonard burner account, and like Kevin Durant, and may have had to place a side bet or something on that to say, no, they're going to score definitely over 6 points. I thought they'd at least get into the 20s with how good and consistent that they've looked throughout the training camp.
Yeah.
But that's part of
one,
why you don't put too much on training camp in the preseason. And then 2, which is why I tell people, let football happen. Let real football happen.
Let's hope the football we saw today doesn't happen next week in Dallas, because then you're going to be, seeing people pressing panic buttons. Everything looks good in training camp, Brandon. You know that drill, right? I mean, all those moon balls, all that stuff. It all looks good. But as I said before, in defense of Russ today, he had no time to drop back, take a 3 or 4 or 5 step drop, and let Malik, hunt down the field. There was no time for that.
Yeah.
So I mean, the offensive line's got to figure. They got to figure it out offensive line wise, and they can't rush for 30 yards.
They can't rush for 30 yards, and you can't rush Andrew Thomas back, because when we're talking about, I know everybody's like, put Andrew Thomas in there, throw Andrew Thomas in there. You can't just come back from Liz Frank like that at 300 something pounds to where you're pounding on that foot day in, day out. So it's unfortunate. I thought James Hudson had a strong enough training camp and preseason to where I'm like, okay, here's the place gap that we can have for 1-2 weeks. And I was hoping that we wouldn't see or wouldn't need Andrew Thomas until at least week 3, the home opener against the Chiefs. But now it's like you're put the player in a position to where he's going to sit and watch the film and be like, all right, do I just push through it? Do I just say, forget it and just try and go for my guys to save the season? Because if he tries to wait too long, if the record isn't there, then you just shut him down for the entire year. And again, I hate thinking like this. Yeah. Week 1, Bart, like I hate the media side of our job sometimes, because it pulls my mind to like thinking like, oh no, the world is going to blow up. Like everything's going to end
Week
tomorrow.
1 is for overreaction. It always is, one way or the other. There's going to be teams after today that are 1-0, and everybody thinks they're on their way to the Super Bowl, right? It's just, I think what's most disturbing about today was the same problems that we've been looking at rose up again and bit the Giants. And like, to me, though, you work all year, you make some changes, you bring a new quarterback in, the entire quarterback room changed, right? It was DJ's fault. What did DJ do today? If DJ played well enough today, that he would have won this game for the Giants if it was behind center. But you're speaking to somebody that that thought DJ's time absolutely had passed and he needed to go. But it's just not a good look, and it's only 1 week, and it's not like Russ was throwing the ball into the dirt all day. I mean, he made a couple of halfway decent plays. He kept some plays alive. But the bottom line is, I go back to the Parcells thing. I mean, you're judged by how many times you get your team into the end zone. And you can't have 10 plays in the red zone and come away with no points. I mean, that's just that's almost impossible to win the game like that.
Yeah, especially when we saw them practice that tight red zone a lot throughout training camp. Like that was something to where the Giants were identifying, or they identified something that held them back last year. And it was that red zone. When they got into the red zone, it was like Graham Gano start warming up that leg because you're going to come in and kick the field goal. This year, I mean, I thought they were very efficient in practice when it came to scoring points, in the red zone and in that tight red zone. So I just look at, again, that's another reason why I got so excited. I allowed myself to get excited, Mark. I told myself I was going to stay under the speed limit at 70. I was going to have my hands at 10 and 2, and I was going to drive and to keep my excitement, I was going to stay under the speed limit. But when I do the Fan Fest, the kickoff event with Russ and Neighbors and those guys, the excitement, you can feel it. Like you can feel what they've been feeling from hanging out together, grinding together, putting in that work. But then the other side of you needs to kick in and think. So has the Commanders.
Yeah.
So has the Cowboys. So has the Chiefs. Everyone's went out to eat. Everyone's been to their version of a Knicks game or Mavericks game or a Wizards game. I wouldn't do that to you, Mark, and take you to a Wizards game, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it comes to that team bonding and to build that chemistry. So Giants 0-1 right now. They got to head down to Dallas. Dallas obviously lost that game against the Eagles, but they did look good at times, especially when it came to that offense.
They looked a lot better than I thought they were going to look.
Prescott.
I thought they looked a lot better.
Dak Prescott looks like a man on the mission. So before we end this out, Mark, like let's end on the positive, because I need PVO, positive vibes only this year, especially with week 1 going into week 2. What did the Giants do well for you to where you feel as though they can expand on that, and that could be something they could use going into week 2?
Well, we can't, other than I would say Wan'Dale Robinson, we can't really say much about anything on offense. I thought defensively, listen, I thought Brian Burns looked terrific today. Not just the 2 sacks, but, he drew a hold. There were a couple of situations there. I thought Abdul Carter, listen, he had a partial block on a punt today. He was in on some stuff defensively in the backfield. I don't think, he had a half a sack. Him and Thibodeau shared a sack early on. But I thought that was a representative, debut for him. It's a shame he didn't get a little more of a hand on that punt, because he was right there.
That could have been a game changer right there.
But and I tell you what, on the next punt, he was very close again too. If you noticed, he had a pretty good dive at it and got pretty close there. So the fact that he's excelling like that on special teams, here's a high first round draft pick, starter, blah blah blah. I like it when I see a guy like that, who's not just thinking, hey, I'm all about sacks and doing that. He clearly wants to do everything, which I thought was super positive. And listen, I think the defense tightened up in the second half. I think they did a good job. There was a stat out there until they went on that scoring drive where they got their second touchdown or their third touchdown. I think they were held like 53 yards or something like that from into the second quarter, later into the game. So, I got to give them some credit for that. I thought that Dexter had a kind of a quiet game today. I didn't really feel like his name was called much today. So this is supposed to be positive only. I'm sorry, I screwed you up. This is a PVO, right? PVO time. So I shouldn't bring up Dexter not having a good game, right?
I mean, it's you mentioned the defensive line though, like you said, Burns, Kayvon, Abdul Carter all registered as sacks. So that's a positive to me. And it's just a one game. The edge is going to eat. There's going to be another game where the interior eats. But without going negative, I want them to stop the run a little bit more. Dak Prescott can't run and scramble like Jaden Daniels can. So maybe next week that could be a positive. You're going to have a quarterback that's going to hold on to the football a little bit longer. I'm not worried about the defense there. I thought Cordell Flott he
was okay. He struggled early.
Game. okay game. Paulson Adebo had a
Okay. Yeah.
okay game as well. It was hard to kind of judge the or evaluate the secondary. I'm going to go back and look at that tape to where I can mainly focus on them. But it's unfortunate Michael McFadden went down.
Yeah.
X-rays are negative, so maybe that's good in the future.
And Musa,
but
if you notice that too, Brandon, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I thought, I mean, Washington did a great job there. They went right after Musa, right after, as soon as he came
right
in
after
and with the Ertz touchdown on the first one, that was a killer. That was a tough, because I like McFadden. He's a very productive, grinder out there. Makes a lot of plays. And yeah, so they went right after Musa, and that was, so they were 7-0 right there. I thought Flott struggled quite a bit early in the game, to be honest with you. He gave up a couple of bad plays on I believe the first scoring drive. But yeah, listen, this game certainly wasn't on the defense, as you said,
yeah, not at all.
but
Not at all.
yeah, they still, at the end of the day, they gave up 220 yards rushing. I mean, that ain't good. 77, 71 of them were
Without a doubt.
were Daniels, but still. Yeah.
Quarterback. And then we flashed it on the ticker. Can someone flash the running back with the hyphenated name? That was someone that they were high on him. They let Brian Robinson go, or they traded him out of there. Krosky Merritt, 10 carries, 82 yards. This guy's he's gonna take over for Austin Eckler. I thought Christian Rodriguez was going to be the running back that kind of gave the Giants a little fit, because they always struggle when it comes to these scat backs that can run through tackles, like the Ahmad Bradshaw type running backs. Giants defense kind of struggles with, but they were giving up the check downs. Like, these guys are getting check down after check down and being able to turn nothing into something. I just want to address, before we go, I know we said PVO, Mark, but I got to address some of the comments. One, because we appreciate you guys for watching, staying up with, well, not staying up with us like it's late, but staying up with this to watch the live stream. But two, it's like, it's only week one and you're reading the comments and it's like, fire this guy. This guy is incompetable at all. So it's like, all right, let's read some of these and let's see if we can attempt to bring the fan page down a little bit with the temperature. Todd says, can someone apologize to DJ? Look at what he did with weapons and the OL offensive line and had a great head coach. Our linebackers are not good. By D Nice 77. Fear No Evil 7 says this has to be Dable's last year. He isn't getting the job done. D Nice secondary made no plays. Like, it is.
Yeah.
But then next week, if they go into Dallas and they win, Mark, it's going to be Brian Dable needs to win the Nobel Peace Prize or the Pulitzer or something. You know what I'm saying?
Listen, it's one week, and we do this every year. I think I mean, I know I said it before here on the show, but I just think what has most people so pissed off is the fact that the stuff that looked bad today is the stuff that's been looking bad for a while. If it was something else, maybe Russ had a really good game, and then the secondary gave up a couple big plays late in the game, then we're pissed off and bitching about something else. But this had such a feel of the last couple of years, that's what, they Giants and Daboll and Kafka and Russ now, they need to show next week in Dallas that this is not going to be the norm. Because I really do believe, and I'm this person who just about a half hour ago on this show said you can't bench Russ after one game. I feel like if we're looking at the same production next week, then you really do have to start thinking about Dart. Because you're going to start to get enough of a sample size where you wonder, well, maybe Russ just doesn't have it anymore. Listen, the Giants have enough weapons. I mean, Slate. I love Slay. He's a perfectly good, complimentary second receiver. Like I said, Robinson he had a terrific game today, but best game probably of anybody. And we know what Malik can do, so really, it comes back down to the offensive line. Russ is not going to have a chance, nor will Dart, if the offensive line plays like it did today. That really is the bottom line.
Absolutely. My dad's the head football coach at William & Mary. He's coached with the Texans. He's been ACC Coach of the Year, head coach at UVA. Ever since I was a kid, because I wanted to be a receiver, and he would always say, You're only as good as your offensive
Yeah,
line.
it's true.
And that's registered with me since I was about 4 to 5 years old, Mark. And it is still true to
Yeah,
this day.
I mean, again, I'm not trying to give Russ an entire free pass here because he didn't, he missed some plays, but it wasn't like he looked that horrible. He just didn't have much time to do
Yeah.
much, and he was, every other
Yeah.
play he had somebody in his face. So they got to get
For
that
sure.
fixed, and they get that at
Yeah.
least somewhat fixed. Whether Thomas is coming back next week, I don't know. That seems to be a week to week mystery. I thought as training camp was progressing and we got to near the end of training camp in preseason, I thought he was going to be ready for the game one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they have to fix that and figure out how to get some running game going because you can't just have Russ back there running for his life all day. And again, I
And it's
refer
a
to the Dart thing. Listen, we are all tantalized by Dart because he really looks like he's picked it up and he's getting it and he's got the moxie and whatnot. But I don't care what you say. That's also preseason and training camp, which we just talked about, and everything looks good in training camp. In preseason a lot of the time. When he's up against a real defense doing things that Washington was doing today, he would have had no chance. I don't care, how many hits he would have stood in and taken, whatever. You name it. Nobody was going to be productive behind that line today. No quarterback.
This guy keeps making fun of me for the way I said Pulitzer. Did I
It's
say that
Pul it's
right?
Pul no, it's
Blazing
Pulitzer. Yeah, Pulitzer. Yeah.
Pulitzer. Okay, well, which is why I am the football player and not an award-winning journalist or anything. Thank you for clearing that up for me, Mark. But I'll close it on this: if the Giants don't get this fixed, then you're gonna see this week in, week out. It's a copycat league, and I think the difference between the Commanders' defense and the Cowboys' defense is I think the Cowboys have a better
Yeah.
secondary on the back end with Trayvon Diggs and the Bland kid. So you saw some 50-50 balls I wish Malik Neighbors would have came down with. But if it was a cleaner pocket, I feel Russell Wilson would have been able to put the moon ball out there for him to run under it as opposed to trying to stop and go back up
Yeah.
and make some sort of
Yeah.
highlight run catch. So
What I would
lot to work
what I
on.
would say here,
Go
I
ahead.
just
Go
want to
ahead.
jump back a little bit because we talked about it early on, but when you listen to Dable's post game, and he was given at least three opportunities. I know our Steve Serby, I know, was one of the guys that asked the question. I think Pat Leonard from the Daily News asked it, and I believe one of the other guys asked it in that interview room, whether Russ was the starting quarterback in Dallas next week. Dable never really did say yes. He did say this game was not on Russ, and he said, "I trust Russ. I believe in Russ." But if you believe in him that much, just I don't know if he's just trying to play a mind game with the media or whatever, but Brian is
Yeah.
is veteran and savvy enough to know that your answers are picked apart very, very very much with a fine tooth comb, and analyzed 100 different times. And if you analyze him not actually coming out and saying that Russ was starting next week, it does make you wonder a little bit, if he's going to be looking at something this week. I think he's going to start Russ. I think it would be too much of a panic move to go not with Russ next week. I don't think it'd be fair for Russ. I think it would be a bad luck for the
Yeah.
team. I mean, you can't tell us all summer long since the moment you brought Russ in that he's the guy, and then after one game, where the offensive line was a sieve, that he's going to be benched. But you almost wonder, if Brian really was speaking from his heart. He never did say Russ was starting next week in Dallas. Now that will be a big topic of conversation when he meets with the media again on Monday in the Zoom, the post game, the post after the game Zoom call. But and at that and
And
at that
they're going to follow up on those
at that point he's
questions.
probably going to say, yeah, of course Russ is starting, like you idiots, right? Well, you didn't say it on Sunday, right? So, but yeah, listen,
Yeah.
this entire day opened a can of worms. I'm reading all the comments, and there's angry Giant fans, and there should be because you've been looking at the same crap for the last 3+ years. I mean, at least I'm under Dayball's watch. So yeah, hopefully we'll see a little improvement next week on the line and in the quarterback play.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to shut it down there. You crazy cool kids and kittens, make sure you guys be safe while you're going out to watch some of these later games. Thanks for watching the Blue Rush post-game live show for Brandon London, Mark Cannizarro. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week after the Cowboys game for sure.
See you, Brandon. Thanks, man.